Steve, the junkies broke into the shop last night, took all my plumbing tools, broke the front window. So take a look, son. That, my boy, is Wolf. I took a look at what my old man was pointing at through the broken window, and it was this giant, 6-foot-long wolf-type dog stretched out on the shelf behind the glass. And I walked up to him, and he picked up his massive head, about the size of a gallon milk jug, and looked up at me with one blue eye, one brown eye, his tongue out, and I took it as an invitation. And I went up to pet him, and I pet behind his neck, his ears, gave him a good rub down, and then he went back to sleep. And that was the beginning of my friendship with Wolf. It was June 1968, South Bronx. I just graduated junior high school, PS 82. My job that summer was to take care of the shop, to take care of Wolf. Beautiful. I'd get up, I'd go downstairs, I'd go down the stoop, and right next door to the stoop was the plumbing shop. It was a storefront. And I'd walk in, I'd jangle his leash, and I'd say, "Come on, boy, let's go." And he'd hop off his shelf, and he'd yawn, and he'd stretch, he'd look up at me, say, "Yeah, boss, what are we doing?" And we'd hit the street all day long. I'd go down to the bodega, I'd get me a soda, buy Wolf some soup bones at the meat market, and we'd walk the streets and have a blast. The tough guys kept their distance for once. I'd be walking down the street, and they'd say something like, "Hey, nice dog, you want to fight my Doberman?" Or, "Nice, hey, Steve, no one gonna mess with you now, bro." Truth is, they did mess with me before Wolf, but now that I had Wolf, I wasn't afraid, and I wasn't alone. We fell in love that summer. Come August, it was a hot day. I was playing basketball down at the PS 90 schoolyard, and a kid came running in all out of breath. "Yo, Steve, man, you got to get up to your building. They're beating on your brother." Dropped the ball, ran up the 2 blocks, and sure enough, there was this kid pushing my brother around, and I jumped right in the middle of it, pushed him too hard. He flipped over backwards, hit his face on the step of the stoop, and through his blood and his tears and his snot, he looked up at me and said, "I'm going to get my brother and my gang after you." Whew. I looked over at my brother. I said, "Go get Dad." Now, there was no Dad. My dad was sleeping off a drunk. I just did that to get my brother off the street. I went back to my stoop, my head in my hands, knowing that I didn't have any help. And I looked over to the shop, and I saw Wolf behind the glass. That was it. Wolf was my plan. It was all I had. I went up, shook the chain. "Come on, boy, let's go." Hopped off the shelf, stretched and yawned, ready for a romp. And I said, "Not today, pal." And I put his leash and collar on, and I took him outside, and we stood in front of my stoop, and I wrapped that leash twice tight around my fist, and I pulled as hard as I could till his eyes were bulging out, his tongue was hanging out, his teeth were in a snare. And we waited, and they came. A bunch of guys came around the corner with some baseball bats, and a big guy right in the middle. Guy came right up to me, kept his eyes on Wolf. They all kept their distance. And he said, "What'd you do that to my little brother for, man? You're so much older and bigger." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm 14. Your brother's 16. Had to do something. He was beating up my brother." Eyes on Wolf. He said, "Someday you ain't going to have that mutt with you, and I'm going to get you. You better look at every corner, because I'll be there, man." The guy nodded to his boys. They took off. The guy took off, and he looked at me one more time. And that's when I knew he wasn't going to get me. You know why? Because he was a big brother, and I was a big brother. He understood. Started high school that September. And I had my after-school job taking care of Wolf, and I got to see him every day. Maybe it was evening, but I did get to see him, to give him a romp, give him some bones, tuck him in. And one night I was heading over to the shop. I saw the light on, and in front of the shop, leaning against the plate glass window, was Jimmy, the scumbag who worked for my old man. He had a Colt 45 in a paper bag, drinking, and a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. And he sneered at me, as usual. And I walked in the shop, And there was my old man snoring on a cot with a bottle of scotch on the side. I looked around. I didn't see Wolf. I ran out in the street and got in Jimmy's face. I said, "What'd you do with my dog, man? Where's Wolf?" And he smirked at me and he said, "Nah, man, it wasn't me. It was your daddy. Yeah, he got good and drunk and lost him in a poker game." I felt like I got kicked in the gut. I ran out in the street, up and down the block, schoolyard basement, alleys, ended up on my stoop, no Wolf. Walked the 8 flights up to my cold, dark apartment. I didn't cry, but I do now. Thank you.